right, everybody, welcome back to episode 33 of the BJJ101 STOREROOM podcast. We have another amazing guest today in Maartin Froneman. Maartin, like we always try to start, well, I always try to start with a really simple kind of intro, but just kind of, we know you're a black belt in JiuJitsu. You've been training under like the Gaha gym since you started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which was a long time ago now. But just for everybody else that doesn't know who you are, just kind of introduce yourself a little bit. Go back as far as you'd like to go back and just kind of talk about like, oh, I grew up here, and just introduce yourself a little bit, and then like kind of where you were introduced to martial arts. So, yeah. Who are you, Maartin?
Who am I?
Yeah.
It's a good question. From South Africa. So born South Africa. Sort of moved to Australia when I was 11.
Okay.
It was like right at the peak of sort of like GFC 2008.
Yeah.
Not a good time to come over.
Okay.
Sort of moving schools a lot.
Yeah.
Sort of like year to year. Because obviously first moved to, as most South Africans do, moved to Perth first.
Okay.
That's like pretty common.
Yeah.
Played rugby in school,
Yeah.
like back in South Africa, cricket. Then just sort of when we came here to Perth first,
Yeah.
then moved to Brisbane. It was about 2 years after, and then sort of
So
struggled.
about 13. So 13 you moved here to Brisbane. Okay.
Yeah. So that's really like where I started like with jiu-jitsu. It's
Okay.
like when I was in Perth, we sort of didn't really do much sports. Like initially there wasn't like any like after school sports.
You're
or
just
anything
settling
like
in,
that.
moved from another country.
Yeah. Yeah, well that's it. Like making new friends,
Yeah.
kind of felt pretty like, it's like, okay, I'm here on my own.
Yeah.
And then sort of did struggle a bit with like bullying and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think that's sort of like always sparked like that bit of interest in jiu-jitsu,
Okay.
even before I started it.
Yeah.
Like playing rugby and stuff like that. It's like, in South Africa, you do have to be quite a tough kid.
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't play rugby, then it's kind of like, oh, you're a little softy.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
That's a pretty normal, like, sort of stereotype over there. But yeah, sort of struggled a bit with like the bullying and stuff.
When you came here
Yeah.
or in South Africa?
No, so it was I mean, in South Africa, it was like quite a lot of like where it's just, that's just like sort of a bit more like a normal thing. But I didn't really.
You mean like, you mean physical violence and stuff though, that type of thing?
Yeah. So, but like I was quite fortunate, like thinking back on it, it's like we actually did have quite a good school and things like that, so it didn't have much issues. But then, Perth was like where I sort of ran into a bit of that, which I think really sort of shot my confidence, which I'd say like as a kid, I didn't really have that much confidence.
Okay.
And then, so moved to Brisbane. I'll never forget the moment.
Yeah.
I was playing UFC on Xbox. And my brother comes over and he's like, oh, come train some MMA with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hell yeah, playing at UFC at the time on the Xbox. So I'm like, all right, let's give this a go. So I rock up and it was at ME Fitness in Springfield.
Yeah.
It was like my first class, and get to the front. It's like, get in there. We have to lay down the mats, like back when Phil like first opened the gym and like inside a little studio bit.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious. Like put the mats down every night, put them back up. I had to sort of do that every night.
Yeah.
And first class, loved it. I was like, because first sort of seeing like all the ground stuff.
Yeah.
You're not really too familiar. Like you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, 100%.
And then sort of like, as it sort of time went on, it's like second class went to go down again. And the guy was like, you need a membership.
Okay.
And so I was like, I went outside and I cried.
Yeah.
Like, because he's like, you can't come in.
Yeah.
And Phil comes out, my brother's like trying to sort. He's like, man, calm down.
Yeah.
And I'm just there like, man, I just want to do this.
Yeah.
And Phil comes out. He's like, all right, you got one more class. That's it. But you are going to have to get a membership.
Yeah.
And so I went back to my mum and dad and I was like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And they're like, how much is it? And I think it was like $600 a month for 6 months.
Okay.
At that gym.
Yeah.
And they're like, I was like, I'll give up my birthday present.
Yeah.
It's like this, can I just like have a membership? And they're like, all right, we'll think about it.
Yeah.
So it was like 2 months later, mum comes up to me and she's like, you still want to do it? And I'm like, hell yeah. Like I could just think back on that time training like over and over and over again. And I remember like having the money, like I think I was like 14 at the time.
Yeah.
And I had the money and I was like, I think it was like $600 and I was like, wow. man, I could buy a lot of sweets with this. A lot of games too, because I love gaming. And then, just that was the decision, and started training, and that was it.
And you know, really funny thing, I just made a post that's gonna come in the next few days on social media about private training. And I said, because I remember on the day where my mom asked me, what do you want for birthday? I said, oh, Mom, I would like a few private classes in Jiu-Jitsu. And when you actually leave something like as a young teenager or something like that to do Jiu-Jitsu, you hooked.
Yeah,
your parents see, look, this
truly
is,
love this thing, to do that. 100%.
It's funny. I just did the post yesterday. It's gonna come out in the next few weeks or so. Just prepare the post.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Maartin, just like going back a little bit though, what was it like growing up in South Africa and that type of thing compared to Australia? Like, what do you think that the difference was that you can notice? I don't know if you can notice when you're 11 years old or whatever, but
I mean, probably the biggest thing is like safety. Like, you know, like being here, like you really let your guard down. You know, versus like over there, you just sort of, I mean, obviously like when you're young, you don't think about that sort of stuff like all the time. But you know, it's like 6 o'clock when the sun's coming down. It's like you had to be home. It's just like, it was a non-negotiable. Because, you know, like during the day we can go out and sort of like, you know, be boys and stuff, but it's like 6 o'clock. It's like, if you're not home, that's,
a red flag.
Very.
And Maartin, what did you feel like? For example, you said you got bullied here. Like, why do you think that happened? Is because the bullying here, it's more like a verbal thing? You think it has to do because you came from another background?
Definitely,
what do you attribute that?
That's a funny one, actually.
Because the bully here doesn't get much into a fight, right?
No.
Like we'd get in South Africa, in Brazil. It's going to be sorted out.
So it was actually, a lot of it was sort of like being in Perth. It just like a lot of the teachers were actually almost like pretty much just as afraid as a lot of the other kids. Because it was predominantly like sort of, I think it was like either like sort of like Aboriginal and things like that. Because they wouldn't actually be able to sort of, it sort of created a bit of a dynamic where even the teachers were quite scared. So I'd be in the back of the class, like have like 5 people around me, and the teachers just like, oh, you know, like,
there's nothing we can do.
Don't do that. And it's like, man, like, you know, it's like when
they're still doing it in front of them, but they're not doing anything.
So, you know, that really sort of, I think that sparked a bit of like, okay, if nobody's, there's not always going to be someone there to help you. So you like have to sort of learn to like think for yourself and like
look after yourself.
So I think that's sort of.
So it was more like kind of like gang type stuff, because this is quite common here. Like people from, you know, Australia and people from other countries and stuff. There's a lot of youth gangs issues with a lot of schools, like in Melbourne and stuff like that. Like with a lot of immigrants and stuff that are coming here as well. That they have, like we had somebody on talking one time, you know, that was a police officer. We didn't actually release that episode, but they talked a lot about that, about the youth gangs and stuff. That's a real problem in Australia at the moment. And
I think you're targeted with, because you're the only one from another place, you know what I mean? Like it's much harder for you to actually have like
the same connections and friends.
So it's easy to target. But it's funny because I come across a lot of parents. Like the other day I came on one and he was like, oh, I want my son, he's being picked up in school a little bit. I want him to be able to fight. And I actually went home and thought about that. And I think there's a misconception. It's actually about the kid learning how to defend himself, and that confidence kind of like portrait that he will pass to reflect on the other kids will by itself make the other kids not touching him. Because I remember when I start training jiu-jitsu, when I start get a little bit good at jiu-jitsu, no one never picked on me anymore. Like it's really funny, but
your attitude changed, your persona changed, your way you carry yourself changes.
I count like if I got into a fight, it was like 1 or twice. You know what I mean? Like I hate fighting. I would never fight unless the last thing and there's nothing else. But I remember clearly that I was never people never picked up on me once I start get good in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like they picked up someone else, but not me. You know?
Yeah, because I was the the South African kid, the
Yeah.
white South African kid.
Yeah,
You know, because like one of the jokes that everybody says when they first meet me, this was like all the way through school, it's like, oh, you're from South Africa. It's like, and you're white. It's like that was literally like the common thing.
Yeah.
So one of the like when you actually pronounce my name, like so in South Africa, like our R's are really strong.
Yeah.
So when I'd introduce myself, it's like Maartin.
Yeah.
So that's how we say it.
Yeah.
And so what like being able to say like Maartin, the way I say it like now, was so difficult. Like if you hear my brother talk, his name's Arnold, which is Arnold.
Yeah.
So it's like a really strong, so everybody would pick it up.
Yeah, like the
straight
accent
away.
is different, so they're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting.
Oh
That's
he's the the South African kids. Yeah, it's like that sort of sparked that. Yeah, I think it was just something for people.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
thinking,
normal for kids and people.
Yeah,
They're
that's
like,
it.
when there's difference, people get a bit worried or uncertain about it. And unfortunately, people are super unkind to things that they're fearful of. And uncertainty brings a lot of fear up in people, you know what I mean? Because they don't understand.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I definitely, that sort of, like what you were saying with kids, you know, like the sort of dad saying, like, oh, I want the kid to be able to, like, fight. And it's like, I've never actually been in a fight in my life, and I'm quite proud of that, and I want to keep it that way. Is like, because sort of like being bullied, you know, like, I was like, oh, I didn't like fighting.
Yeah.
It's like, I never sort of liked that aspect of it. But then, obviously, there did come a point where I sort of stopped. Like, I was training a lot of jiu-jitsu, and that really, like, built up my confidence, where I never felt like I needed to fight or wanted to fight someone. You know,
That's
it's
definitely
like,
true, yeah.
and it's I think the disconnect between some other martial arts, like, I'm an advocate for any martial art.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest disconnect between, like, some martial arts and what I think, like, separates, like, jiu-jitsu and judo and things like that is the ability to, like, control someone without having to hurt them. And it's like, even if you choke someone, it's like you put them unconscious, and then you can just control them, or like time up or something. You know, it's like just find some kind of way to not have to hurt the person. So when I started training a lot of like Muay Thai, and like, because I know you've done like kickboxing and stuff as well. Like, did you do kickboxing before you?
Yeah, I did some striking stuff before, nothing seriously, but yeah.
So I started training like a bit of Muay Thai, and that's where I started noticing, not just in the people around me that were training. Like, there's this one guy, I won't say his name, but he was training a lot of jiu-jitsu, and then he started training a lot of kickboxing, like the Muay Thai. And there was like, he went from being this super, super, super nice guy to then just like, and it was like he started getting this chip on his shoulder. And I even started noticing for myself where, like, if I was previously, you know, if you're walking and you're in a bad mood or whatever, and somebody looks at you in the wrong way, or like they're just sort of they're trying to egg you on in a way, like you know, they're just being like, and for lack of a better term, like,
you mean this individual was doing that? Okay, so they were becoming confrontational in a bit.
Yeah, like, and just people like sort of in general, where I noticed when I was training Muay Thai, I started, because of you're almost learning, which is why I think there's that disconnect between something like jiu-jitsu and like something like boxing, and even though I'm like a big advocate for it as well, is that you're learning, especially for a kid, like before you learn, like obviously the things you learn as you grow up. So if you grow up in a household that, you know, doesn't teach you respect, like good morals, then when you go into something like boxing, then what you're learning, or the kid, because they don't have that moral,
misused,
they learn, okay, how do I solve my problem? Somebody's picking on me.
Punch in the face.
I punch them in the face.
Yeah.
Versus jiu-jitsu, it's like, okay, somebody's, you know, annoying, like trying to fight me or whatever, and they take him down, they sit on top of him and like, leave me alone. And so it's this sort of, I do think that's why, like, especially for younger kids, I think that's where jiu-jitsu far exceeds, like, and
striking martial arts,
as a defensive sort of, for kids growing up especially. But then once you sort of get older, I do think the striking element becomes
it's important for sure. Like you do need to learn lots of different skills and stuff like that. But I think that's a really important point. And I think like the thing you touched on there was like, because there's a different level of control and assessment as you do jiu-jitsu, because you actually have to think about how to control somebody and manipulate them and control them. the approach to self-defense is the same, like, or the approach to the way you express yourself is the same. Whereas kickboxing and boxing it's not as cognitive and analytical and focused on analysis of like, oh, I'm going to control the person. It's just, I'm going to explode on this person in their direction and hopefully that it works out. So I think that's a very important to do with like the chip on the shoulder type thing. I think that happens a lot more in striking martial arts too, because you spar at 80%. You spar at 20%, 30%, 40%. So everyone's kind of like, man, if we went for real, I would get that guy. Oh, if we went for real, no, I would beat him. And they all have that same attitude. So no one really knows the pecking order. And look, I don't think that you have to focus on it as like a competitive thing, but like all social scenarios are hierarchical. They have to be. And people have to know their position for there to be balance, and there has to be like comfort. Does that make sense? People need to know their position in society, in the world, and this type of thing. That can change. There's no problem with it changing. But when everybody thinks that they're the number one, when everybody thinks that they're the strongest person,
the environment is horrible.
It's very chaotic and it's very unstable. And that's what happens with striking martial arts, because you can't train at 100% all the time. You know what I mean? Like you can with jiu-jitsu.
Like almost the only way you can go 100% is if you're trying to knock the person.
Yeah, and you're going to hurt each other. It's impossible. It's unsustainable.
And it's just like, first of all, from like as you're growing up, you sort of start to realize, obviously, like I'm sure other people learn this more than me, but it's like, the injuries that sort of come from doing not just martial arts, but it's like just things in life. So it's like trying to, like, one of the biggest things I've been trying to focus more on is that sustainability. It's like being able to train still hard, but not doing it in a way where you're sort of, you can go hard for like 3-4 weeks and then you're like,
non-stop,
man,
and then you
like,
blow your knee out.
It's like now you gotta like rest again for 3 months, and then it's like, you can't sustain that. Like you don't improve a lot. So versus being able to train like a couple of times a day even, but you're training like a very light intensity where you're getting the muscle memory, things like that. It was
skill
like,
acquisition focus.
Whereas
training.
when I first started training, it was just like we only had 2 days a week, so it was like we just went hard. But it's like as you sort of start getting more injuries, it becomes less sustainable. So I much prefer training more often now and
lower intensity.
Low intensity, absolutely.
I definitely think that is something that a lot of people struggle with early on. Like even like, man, even guys that are like high level competitors and athletes and all that stuff. Now that's a little bit different because they're focusing on tournaments and things, but in general, like nobody likes to lose. We've talked like with so many people about training methodology and ideas. It's like nobody likes losing, and the biggest reason behind like increased intensity in training is like, I don't want to lose. And it's like, but you have to change your focus. You got to just make a decision to say, all right, what's the purpose of what I'm doing right now? I'm here to learn, or I'm here to improve. I'm here to bash everybody and be the best guy in the gym. Like, I don't know if that's positive long term, because you can't be that person forever. Does that make sense? Every now and then, like, there's going to be somebody that beats you, and then you're going to beat them. It's normal, man.
I mean, a good example of what you're just saying there is like Mike Tyson. Like how now he's like, for years he's struggled to be able to switch that off. And then it's like, where are you going to go from like after you're competing? It's like, you're going to try to bash your like doors in, and it's like versus like competing. So I definitely, one of the, which you have always mentioned to me, is like that ability to sort of just be able to switch it on. It's like be able to actually go hard versus then, like being able to sort of switch it off again. And that's definitely something I've struggled with for a long time.
Mine's the opposite. Mine's the opposite. I'm too aggressive.
You see, the funny thing is actually that middle ground, you know what I mean? That capacity to go, to switch from, resting and calm and light, even on a match, to then, even on a competition, to then go super hard, you know what I mean? And that is very important to have, That's a very good skill to have.
I think
because you surprise the opponent a lot by doing that.
For sure. I think I found that this weekend, so I will just say something first, but like I think I'm able to do that in training. like train comfortably and nicely in that now. Before, when I first started, of course, like coming from rugby and all the other stuff, and you want to be, you know, dominant and smash and I want to be powerful. You have a hard time understanding that, like, actually in training, there's no real purpose for that, unless the purpose of the training is preparing for a comp or something like that. All right. I've always had an issue with being extremely aggressive and overtly, like, I'm trying to destroy you in competition. Now, what I've always had an issue with, and this is something I changed this weekend. I talked to Paul White, who's been on the podcast before, who's a psychiatrist, you know, many, many years. And I'm like, man, this keeps happening. And he's like, dude, you need to adjust your approach. It's not even the technicality. It's not this. It's your demeanor. It's the way you're approaching the person. I was like, man, that's interesting. Because I've been listening to a lot of books, audio books recently about like psychology and stuff like that and the dynamics of things. And he said, look, man, what you're doing is you're putting people in a state of fear immediately. So they become extremely defensive because of the way you approach everything. And he said, it's a subconscious thing that happens. It's with the refereeing staff. It's with the people that are scoring the fight. It's with everybody.
The body language.
The body language, the way you approach, the energy that you're exuding, like the intensity that you're exuding makes people like worried. It's unstable. It's scary. It's like frightening. So when you engage with somebody to do competitive stuff with them, they're already defensive. When someone goes to give a referee decision, they're already like, this guy's got something like he's too uncomfortable, makes me uncomfortable.
Too much,
yeah. So I adjusted that on the weekend and I had like a really good result. And I just thought it was really interesting that it was such a small adjustment, just like we're talking about now, to do with like the idea of training to focus on like efficiency or sustainability, as opposed to just going there and bashing. You know what I mean? I think it's a really thing, because it's such a subtle difference, but it
crazy.
Changes everything.
It's crazy because now you see this as such a small thing, etc. But it's such a
it takes 10 years to figure out.
It's
you know
crazy, this, you know, because that's what I tell people. A lot of the improvement, right? Man, obviously there is the technical part. Obviously you have to drill. You cannot improve without that. But a lot to do with improvement has to do with the mindset, you know what I mean? About looking at how you acting, you know what I mean? Like what can you tweak, but nothing on with the technique side, you know what I mean? And a lot of people, you might tell them in that for a long time that there's not. So it seems it is just a detail, it's a mindset, but we have so many like things that are already like in depth in our brain that we do not change, you know what I mean? Like even the way you react when someone submits you, like, you know what I mean, like that you like someone that less graduated than you, and then do one good move that, you know, it submit you, just by you have to, no matter what, after you get that, and you have to go, you have to work on it, to go, wait a second, I'm trying to work on a skill, or, you know, he got me, congratulations, whatever, let's go again, let's try, you know, the way you deal with everything, like you need to really look into it, you know what I mean, to try to make it better, you know, and all these details make a huge difference.
But I think the thing that actually gets you to realize that is the acting, is the physical action part. Like I'm never going to come to the realization of like, man, you're too aggressive, without failing and losing competitions because I'm too aggressive, or without getting submitted because you're overly like aggressive and you're like, screw this person, fuck them, like you don't learn this stuff until you put yourself through that situation. And it comes to every portion of life. You don't learn how to have a business better until you go and fuck up 10. You don't learn how to drive your car properly until you're a learner and you crash the car once. You know what I'm saying? Or scratch the wheels on the curb. Like, it's a part of the process of learning. The problem that I think people kind of have is that they don't use those lessons to actually adjust. That's the thing that's dangerous. You're supposed to fail in life, but you're supposed to use those failures as an opportunity to improve. So it might take someone 10 years, it might take someone 3. Everyone's different, but like eventually, if you keep on the path and you keep attempting and you keep competing in terms of jiu-jitsu, or you keep opening businesses, eventually it'll work. You will figure it out. You will figure it out eventually, but you've got to be open to understanding, and that's hard to do because it's fearful and scary and all that type of thing. And man, it's taken me 10 years to figure out that being like overly aggressive and like your passion alone is going to carry everything. No, man, there's other things too. And actually, a lot of the aggression is affecting everything around you. Like, no, you need to relax, man. You need to relax. It's not healthy. Like, it's not serving you in any way. It helps me like just consistently push forward and have this attitude that I'm never gonna give up on things and and all that type of stuff. But you need to have like some balance, like you were saying before. The aggression's good for certain things, but you also need to be able to like interact with people and have them feel comfortable enough to actually exchange with you. Like for me, this is the competition scenario. Otherwise, people are so afraid of exchanging with me. I would always lose. Not always lose, but I would lose a lot of fights that like, man, I fought better than the guy, I did all this stuff, but no one scored anything. The guy avoided the whole time. I'm pissed off and annoyed. And because I'm pissed off and annoyed, the referee gives a fight to the other guy. And I'm like, what the? And it just kept like making the situation worse. You know what I mean? It's funny. I just think it's a funny thing to talk about because it's the same. It connects with the training methodology thing. Like, I know we all want to win and we all want to do well and we all want to do that. And a lot of the time, aggression is the thing that damages that. You know what I mean? Or your desire, it's kind of like that reverse effect thing. Your desire to succeed a lot of the time stops you from succeeding, and it's so paradoxical and interesting. And that's something, man, that I struggled with a lot, particularly to do with competition stuff. So, Maartin, you're also an avid competitor. You've competed a few times. You know, you before COVID, you were like a Pan Pacific champion, no-gi, open weight, everything. So, you know, these are quite big achievements. You've won some pretty major tournaments and stuff like that. When did you actually start competing? Because let's even go before that. Let's go all the way back to your story before where you started and you signed up at, you know, the JiuJitsu gym there, and then we'll lead into the competition stuff.
All right. Yeah, so it was training twice a week initially, and it was really good to just like, because I sort of not doing any sports or anything for a long time, which like if parents are listening to this, like please get your kid into sports or some type of physical activity.
Exactly what I tell. Anything, just do something.
Anything, like walk, run, doesn't matter.
Swim, anything.
Because I started getting quite overweight. Yeah. And the thing, first of all, like from a health perspective, it's not good. No. And then second of all, from a mental perspective, because it sort of builds habits over years, and I've struggled a lot with those habits over these years. Yeah. And it's like, so starting jiu-jitsu was like the one thing that just, because like when you're young, you play rugby or whatever, it's like, you don't need to watch what you eat. Like you just eat whatever, right? Yeah. Like eat as much food as you possibly can to just try to keep as much weight. So it was like starting jiu-jitsu. But like if you train all the time, that's a good thing. Yeah. But it's like as soon as you don't do any physical activity, that's where it just like it's horrible. So starting jiu-jitsu was and Phil's classes, like I remember Phil actually used to get like complaints because of how intense the warm-up was, because the warm-up was like 20 nearly 30 minutes, but it was awesome because it actually got us like super fit, and it just stopped injuries because we were actually able to like get into that like high heartbeat, like you're always ready to go, versus like sort of had that low intensity and then you train hard and then it's like
big shock to the system.
So it's like once I got training, it was like twice a week. Then we moved to 3 times a week. And then that's when we actually moved to like the different gyms. So it was like I'd say about like a 2 to 3 year period where I was just training a lot, like just sort of moving. So I didn't compete until I got my blue belt. So I was, I think 16 at the time. And it was like, I was so nervous. Like it was, in my mind, I was like trying to practice that whole like, whoa. Like, I got this. I'd be like in the shower and I'm like see my hand like raise and stuff. Oh my god, went out there and just got demolished like straight away. And it was like, thinking back on it, so as soon as the match finished, so it was like, obviously back then I think there was like 1 comp every 2 months. I think that was about the average. So it was quite difficult to get like comps. So when I went out my first comp as a blue belt, which I don't recommend that, like definitely if you're a white belt, compete at a white belt. Like just go out there, compete,
figure out what
get
it's about.
confident with it. Because losing at blue belt, like obviously the guy versus who was like a 33, 34-year-old dude. Like I was 16. You know, I was super nervous. First grips I made, arms were gassed. You know how it is. First like couple of times competing. So as soon as I went out there and I lost, man, I just shot my confidence. Like it was just like I actually ran into the bathroom and I just started crying. And Alex, you know, like Alex Hong, he came in there. What? It was like just because it just, you know, it was like quite overwhelming at first. But then I didn't compete then after that for I think it was like nearly 2 or 3 years. Like it was a long time. Because it just sort of, I think I just had that negative
association with it.
Negative association. But I mean, like I was super skinny. Like I lost like way too much. Like I didn't eat much food before the comp, things like that. So it's just like it was not good.
It's interesting saying this, and I'm looking back right now. This time we had a lot of white belts, just like literally newcomers that give it a go. And looking back, I think it was very positive because they take away already that kind of, they had no expectations. But now they all got, having a feedback from all of them, they're all super keen and super happy because they had already all the experience, you know, they got nervous, etc. But because they didn't have any expectation, they just like, oh wow, I know I can do this better, you know, let me go again. So I think it's very positive.
I think it's a little bit different though with because we do that program. So we do like a competition training program. Like everybody that like enters that, they already have like an
that's true.
Like an attitude of like, I want to do this seriously and I'm going to try, and if I lose, I'm going to probably do this next year and do this thing again and
so
change that. So it's a little bit different with that.
The program that we do here, like the competition training program that we do for the state championship, that actually helps because they have to have a foundation, understanding what it's all about, have a few drilling techniques, a few key explanations, so that helps a lot. I think without that it would be too early, but having that is great.
Like for example, did you know the rules when you went and competed the first time as a blue belt?
No.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like it's a funny thing because I remember when I competed in jiu-jitsu and I was like an orange belt or something, dude. I was like an orange belt or white belt, and there was
I have no clue.
I can't remember if it was an orange belt or a white belt. I didn't know there was points.
Yeah.
I just knew that if I made the guy tap, I would win.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I didn't even know what points was. Man, and I mean, I remember like I wasn't even skillful. The guys were more skillful than me, but I was big and stronger. I was much bigger and much stronger. I was probably like 80 kilograms, and there was a division where it was like plus 70 or plus 55 or something. Man, this is at 14, dude.
Yeah.
14 or whatever. And it was like plus 55 kids division. You fight some other kid, and it's not fair, man. I'm like a man. This is a kid. And then you just grab the guy, put him in the closed guard, and do a kimura. Like they don't have the ability to defend. They're just physically big.
And see, this is where it's kind of like I feel like our experiences growing up, like with competition and sort of like our introduction to jiu-jitsu was polar opposites. Like, where it was like,
no, but I went and lost as a blue belt, man. The first time I fought as a blue belt, I fought an adult male. This is when I was 16. Same situation, man. I fought an adult male and I lost on points. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Then I was doing like a knee bar on the guy. I was on the knee bar position. They're like, he's doing a knee bar, but I'm not doing this. I had no idea. It's crazy.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Knee bar.
I wasn't actually doing a knee bar. I was just in the position of a knee bar. And they're like, oh, man, I don't know what I was doing. It was a mistake. So you came back after like 3 years or so. Like, was there something that made you want to go back into competing, or you just...
I think just training consistently. Like, you know, I loved training. Like, it was one of those things that, you know, it's just the sort of like relationships that you build, the friendships that you build over the years of like training with people, you know, because you like I was just talking
it's quite intimate, you know.
It is. It's like, you know, people that don't do jiu-jitsu won't really understand it until they have done it for a while. It's like when you first start it, you know, it's a lot more intimidating than it is that sort of, you know, like the sort of euphoria sort of feelings that you get from it. I was lucky, like my first training session, I got that straight away. So I was pretty much always chasing that. So it's like for people who like start off and you know, haven't sort of like trained for a while. It's like initially it's just, oh, I'm getting beaten up. It's like, you know, this guy's like choking me. He's like, initially, you know, you feel quite strange, like, you know, like closed guard positions like that, like mount,
close positions. It's like in your personal bubble. And
yeah,
stuff
exactly. Especially like no gear, and you know, it'd be like shorts and like some people like back then, you know, singlets and stuff. It's like obviously now it's like, that's why I love the fact that we have like the uniforms.
Yeah.
You know, initially it was always like, oh, you know, like it is like a big commitment, especially like as a uni, like sort of a student, things like that. It's like not having the money, but it's like having a uniform really changes that perspective of like, especially for new people.
Yeah.
It's like
belonging to a team. Yeah. Like this
First of all, belonging to a team, and then also it's like you're not doing anything like weird or strange, you know. I think that's one of the things that people
never thought that way,
disassociate like with. It's like, even for me when I first started doing it, it's like, you know, it feels quite strange because you're like right up against you know, it's like positions like north south. It's like
if you're
all
wearing
those sort of positions,
shorts,
and I also think it brings to that idea like, oh, we're doing, so there's other people, we're actually doing a sport here, you know what I mean? Like there's not interesting point. I never thought that way.
No, definitely just having that ability to sort of like do the martial arts. Like, so it was like the thing that pushed me to start competing again was, so after having quite a bit of time where I actually started getting back into training, or I was just training consistently, I think that built up my confidence where I was like, okay, well, it was like I had a negative experience, but then I was like, I just want to like go out there and try it again. So it was like I think consistency is, and I know you're a big like, so like seeing how much you've trained over the years, you know, you've had multiple injuries, like,
for sure.
like both knees, is it?
Both knees, ankles, everything, man.
You know, it's like seeing you come back from that, and not just come back from it, but like literally come back from it. It's like,
like improve afterwards as well.
That was, to me, that was quite like eye-opening,
inspiring as well.
Massively inspiring. You know, because especially knowing you, you know what I mean, like it's different to see, you know, like high level athletes and things on Instagram and things like that, and you know, you see they come back from injuries and then they win and things like, but to know somebody, you know, where I remember us training together at Blue Belt, and I'll never forget it. It was still at the old place across the road, and it was like, man, I could not hold you down. It's just like trying to get on top of you or anything. You just like, you threw me off straight away. It was good training sessions like back in those days. So I definitely seeing you sort of like recover from those things and then actually come back. Like after I hurt my back, so it was like the main reason I sort of stopped training for a long time. So I did get back to competing, got really back into it. All the way through blue belt, I competed a bit, and then a purple belt. I think I competed
after your like 2 or 3 year break, you came back. You were a blue belt still, and you were
So I was still training the whole time, but I think it was about like a year and a half that I didn't compete. And then I sort of just went back out there. I think I lost my first match, and then you know, you sort of warm up like to get a bit more used to it. Because the biggest thing I've always struggled with is that as soon as we get ready for the comp, or like we're at the place, my heart rate shoots like at like 200, and I'm just sitting there the whole time, and I'm like shaking and freaking out.
Stress response.
It was actually only on the weekend that for the first time.
You seem really relaxed there, having fun, doing fun,
And that was actually the first comp that I actually was able to just walk out there, like do the whole, because usually, you know, it's like you do the bow and like come out and like shake the hand of a referee and then and it's that, usually that's like the moment where it's like boom, it's just like I go crazy, like just inside, it's almost like I just get eaten alive from the inside. The biggest change that happened for me was one time when that happened, and this was before, like obviously the weekend I really felt like something was completely different. Like I was just calm. You know, so like to me that's a win, because I've
100%
improved.
Kind of like you were saying, like with being able to switch off your demons in that way, where it's like you're able to just calm down and use your aggression when you need to, but then not having to like be like crazy about it. Versus for me, it was always like trying to switch off this nervous freak. I was kind of like the the person on the opposite side of you like scared of you.
Okay.
Like if you were like if we were versing each other, I'd be like the person scared of you, you know, being like, oh well, I'm gonna get got anyway. You know what I mean? Like sort of in that sense.
Okay.
So the biggest thing that changed for me a few years ago was where I was actually able to still compete. Was I'd get on the mats, and I remember one time I like, you know, heart rate shot up again. I freaked out again. And then I just stepped on the mats for the next match. And then I was like, you know what? This is my body just preparing itself.
Yeah.
Or like sort of trying to
acknowledging the experience.
Yeah. So that just changing my perspective, like you were saying, changed my experience. So then I felt like once I got that, that's where I started like improving with competitions. Because like I always felt like when I was blue, purple, even up to purple belt, it's like I always felt really technical. Like I felt like, because I would just always drill my techniques, go over them over a million times, and it's like doing that so much, and then going out and competing, and then just not being able to do anything. It's like I felt like I was trapped and I couldn't compete properly. And so being able to sort of switch my mindset and then go like, okay, this is normal. And it's like, again, it's like you said, like just literally having that consistency.
Again, another thing here, that seems very simple, but it's such a big victory, right?
No, but you, like I said before, like you got to go through that whole process of losing and panicking and losing and panicking, and then going, oh fuck, what do I do different? Oh shit. And then eventually after a bunch of years you go, I've changed my whole perspective, or it's one little thing that's different, and you start to have different results. I think too, like everybody always has like, you can't be completely well-rounded. Like I'm always going to struggle with, because of how you've developed as a human being, I'm always going to struggle with being too over the top and aggressive and all that. I have to do particular behaviors to find more of a balance. For example, I do certain breathing things now that like, that a lot of people think are like weird and stuff, and it's crazy, but that helps me just like regulate my aggression and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? It helps me regulate your heartbeat, it helps me regulate my intensity and that arousal you feel, where you get that tingling feeling all over your whole body and you're ready to go and do something aggressive and fight somebody or whatever. You might have to do something the opposite, where you actually amp yourself up, listen to crazy music, sacrifice a goat, whatever, do something crazy and drink some blood, I don't know, but like you have to eat some steaks before you go there, so you feel like powerful and ready to go and do all this stuff. It doesn't matter what the ritual is, but I think like specifically around competition, to find that perfect state for you, you have to create certain rituals that help you find that balance. You're never going to be balanced naturally, but you can do things that help you find that middle ground a little bit more. Like I've done all these stretching exercises that I do when I warm up. Now I do this breathing stuff, and this breathing stuff helps me the most, in my opinion. Like I get focused on what I'm doing. I do my breathing things and do certain movements with my arms on my body that I feel like is like a ritual, and then I go there and do it. And now it's at a situation where I'm much more in the middle, comfortable, centered, ready to just like react to stuff instead of trying to force everything to happen what I want. So I think that's a really interesting kind of thing you're focusing on. And something different too is like, even the guys that are the most famous, it's not that they don't get scared, it's not that they don't have anxiety, it's just that they act regardless of those emotions. You know what I'm saying? Like they do a good job of, like you're talking about, acknowledging that experience, understanding that it's there, and then still acting irrespective of what's happening emotionally. You know what I mean? I think people that have success in life, in anything, whether it's business or it's whatever, are able to act beyond their emotions. If you're ruled by your emotions, you can't have success in things, because it's too chaotic, it's too unpredictable. You can't. And
you start reducing your world as well. You know what I mean? You get trapped. You know what I mean? So you could be, for example, in your case, I wouldn't compete anymore. You know, it's someone that has scared to get a flight. Man, I'm not flying anymore. So suddenly your world start getting super small.
For sure, for sure. But I just mean like in general, like that's one component of it. We're talking more like to do with the competitive side, but like, when of course you're going to close off things and be fearful. That's like a fear approach to kind of like feeling uncomfortable, which is probably the most common thing we do. That's what your brain's designed to do, actually. Your brain is designed to tell you, hey, this makes me feel scared, this makes me scared, or this makes me feel bad. Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's a survival response.
Yeah.
You're going to survive. You're going to run and hide. The problem is it's really difficult to advance using that approach. So you have to, and again, this is what I'm saying, people that are successful in anything have the ability to go, I know this is scary. I know that I feel anxious, but it's just my body preparing for anything that's worrying, scary, fearful, something that could be dangerous for me. All right, I know that that's there, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And I'm going to go there and have fun, you know what I mean? So you tweak your brain into...
I don't know about that, man. I don't think it's ever fun. I don't think it's ever truly fun. I think the experience after winning is fun.
Yeah, it is.
I think the dopamine hit of winning and succeeding is fun. I don't think the experience is fun. Man, ask guys that fight MMA. Do you think I do this because it's fun? I don't do this because it's fun. I'm getting fucking punched in the face, man. It's not fun. Do you know what's fun? The victory and the dopamine, the high of success after. It's not the experience that's fun. It's nerve-wracking and horrible, man.
Yeah, but you're only gonna have the victory and have a good time
if you go
after,
through the experience.
If you go through the experience.
Correct.
So that's what I mean. The fun is at the end. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying
you're talking overall.
Overall, yeah. Otherwise, you would not allow yourself to have that.
But I think this is a common mistake. I think people believe they should be having fun while they're doing hard shit. No, it's not supposed to be fun. When you go
only one's gonna be the winner.
Correct, but when you go and do crazy hard workouts, it's not fun during the workout. It's fun afterwards that you feel better.
I always tell people, man, when you come to jiu-jitsu the day you're like, oh man, I don't feel like it. The fun is when you put the music on the way back home, dude.
Correct, in the car, think about it.
That's I always thought about that. This is where the fun starts.
But competition is the same. And this is the thing, that's why like a lot of people like, man, people that do competitive stuff are crazy because they willfully put themselves in a shitty spot. But it's like, you need to do that to be better at things. You have to force yourself into shit that's not fun and enjoyable and lovely and amazing. Do shit that's uncomfortable.
Man, I told Anton, and I started like probably a month ago. I don't have hot shower anymore.
Yeah,
like only cold. Yeah. Like, and man, like some days you go, yeah, like last night was one of them. You go, but then might you finish like I don't have more these like I'm feeling pain here. Somehow it is not happening. Yeah. And I'm also finished. You kind of like. I went outside, it's cold, like you don't care, you know what I mean? Like it's really weird, like how your body, because you experience that, like I'll give it a go, I'll go no matter what, you know? You feel better afterwards just by this little trick in your mind that you challenge, you know what I mean? You're going.
Well, you're actually retraining your brain, dude, when you do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I went outside, which was cold as well, but I was cooking something, you know, for dinner. And I was like, because if I had the hot shower, I'm going to be, oh my God, I think I'm going to get sick, you know what I mean? It's so cold. Man, I was like, oh, good. No worries.
That's interesting. There's a lot of people that do a bunch of like courses and things around that stuff. It's all of it's like closely linked with dopamine. So like Eddie Foster, who's been on the podcast before, he's been talking about it a lot because he's listened to a bunch of podcasts around this stuff. But like even that situation of like having a cold shower, that like anxiety response to like, oh, this is going to be uncomfortable, and putting yourself through hard stuff and then feeling good after it, it gives you a massive spike in dopamine naturally. And what dopamine does is motivate people to do things, and you feel better and you feel like attacking the day and you feel motivated and driven to go and succeed and you know achieve things in life. When you do the comfort-based shit, which is like indulgence, which is, I'm cold, I'm going to watch a movie, I'm not going to do that workout today, I'll do it tomorrow, I'm just going to put my slippers on and have a hot shower and a hot cup of cocoa. What that actually does is deregulate all those dopamine spikes, and now you're always like unmotivated, and you always feel like, nah, I don't really feel like it. I don't. And you kind of touched on it before about like habits. Well, this is a mental habit. You have to build habits in everything. You have to build routine in everything. It starts with your mind as well. So when you put off that workout, you're retraining your brain to accept that from yourself, or you're retraining your brain to be less motivated.
To always have an excuse.
And when you go and do these little things, correct, you actually train your brain in the opposite. And that's the same with competing. That's why we always say this at the end of all competitions and classes and stuff. It's like, even if you didn't win, the fact that you went there and competed is important. Yeah. Good for you. That's the victory in itself, because you did something to go and actually push yourself to improve. You did something to create more motivation. And have a look at the people that lost. They're the ones all here coming back the day after, 3, 4, 5 days in a row, that want to train and get better, because now they have motivation to do more. When the people that don't compete, they're the ones that when it's too cold, they don't turn up. The people that have been coming now because it's cold here and it's been 8 degrees, put the slippers on, they don't come here because they don't compete. They don't have motivation. They don't motivate themselves to continually be driven and do more. You have to act to have that happen. Just like you're having cold showers, just like you entered a competition and now you want to train more, and you come into the trainings more, and you come into the trainings more, and you're fixing whatever injuries you have and doing yoga and doing all that stuff. It all starts though with retraining your brain as well by doing all this stuff. You know?
And man, you save water. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
I said 30 seconds, man. Never goes so quick. Yeah. You save water, you save soap, you save everything, man. Yeah. It's just so quick.
Yeah, definitely. Like when it comes to the kind of excuses, I definitely became that person. Like I was saying to my girlfriend, like just the other day, I was like, you know, I said, like, I'm sorry for all the times that I just haven't done the things I should have done. It's like I think that's sort of the biggest thing that competing gives you, is that ability to just go, you know, because it costs money. It's like you have to do a lot of training for it. It's like you might go out there and get hurt. It's like, you know, and it's just like, is it really worth it? It's like, you know, I could be laying like on the couch, like watching Netflix or like whatever. It's like doing the comfort stuff, is like you said. And it's like, I remember even on the weekend, it's like getting bumped up to the ultra heavyweight, and it's like, I was like, it's like, you know, and after like getting knee barred twice, I was like, you know, I'm all right. Like I've already done my part. Like, you know, who's going to notice that I'm not there on Sunday? And then I remember it was in the morning, I woke up and I was just like, nope, that's bad. Just get in the car and go. And I'm glad I did, you know. I went out there and just got beaten up, but that's part of the experience. And I felt like every match I was improving a little bit. In the sense that it's like, I felt like by like the first match of like against Robbie, it's like that first one, you know, it's like I actually went out there and I felt quite confident. It's like obviously technically like sort of just you know, sort of things sort of, I think now I'm recognizing that time on the mat, because like obviously like having a fit body and like a strong body where you feel strong and healthy is important, but then also like you have to have the training, you know. It's like if you want to compete at jiu-jitsu, you have to train jiu-jitsu. It's like, you know, it's like if you want to run a marathon, like,
you gotta go and run.
Your position have to be sharp.
You gotta go run. It's like that's the thing. So
yeah, I think competition training versus normal training is very different. Like you have to have shit. Like the way we structured the competition training program in terms of like the drills and stuff you do, it's not about you can't think anymore. Like it can't be something that you're like actively trying to process and go, what's the best option now? Like it's too quick, it's too aggressive, it's too much intensity. Like this is real, like high level, quick paced, reaction based stuff. The only way to do that is to train at that intensity for a period of time, not forever. You can't do it forever. That's why people do camps at that intensity to prepare for the battle. You can't train for that like that year round. You should train year round for skill acquisition, like we talked about before. 70, 60%, 75% intensity. Think about things, explore, blah blah blah. Competition style, not at all. You might do 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, whatever preparation for a major event. But in that preparation, it's all about reaction. You don't have to think about what you're doing anymore. You've done it in that period of time. You've done it 10,000 times. The moment you touch your partner's body, you're already completing the movement. It's not something you have to process or think about anymore. That's how sharp it has to be. That's how automatic, autonomous that you have to train into your own mind, the skills that you're going to apply on a competition. You can't do it any other way. That's why people do pad work in boxing. That's why people go over and go over and go over certain combinations, and then get their, you know, they watch footage of their opponent and pick weaknesses they have and go over and go over and go over the combinations that are going to be best for their style of striking. It's how it works. You can't beat that shit. You got to do it.
Because I still believe, I'm sure you would agree with me on this, whereas your number one enemy is yourself. It's
Yeah,
like
for sure.
If you're not, you know, it's like if you go out there, like, you know, it's you're versing your opponent, but everything you do will dictate as well what they have available. And so it's like if you're going out there and you're like, you know, just leaving your legs exposed or like arms are up,
But that
it's like,
starts 3 months before.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And this is what I'm trying to kind of mention.
yeah.
Like exactly what you're saying. Yeah, leaving your legs out and doing this and doing that and fixing your flaws and stuff. That starts 3 months before. That starts 5 years before.
It's not
like,
going to be like a YouTube video right before your match, like, oh, I might
flying
do this.
armbar. Yeah, well, that's common, man. There's like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to do a flying armbar this weekend. Dude, you've never done one before. Why are you trying to do one now? The funny thing is like one guy in 100 will be able to do it, though. That's the problem.
And that's what I mean by like you're your own worst enemy, is because if you haven't practiced those movements, you know, it's like, first of all, you've got a resisting partner. So it's like if they're bigger, stronger, faster, better than you, that's already like, you know, you're trying to beat Usain Bolt at running when you never run. And it's like, you know, you have to first start running yourself, and then you can start to like add that. And that's like you were saying, like it's just that repetition.
But
one thing that I really liked from the competition class was how you mentioned with the ability to, in between matches, be able to switch off and like calm yourself down. As like, I think that's something where previously I'd spend an hour, 2 hours before the match, and then obviously like I'm still just like ready to go. And then by the time the match comes, you're like,
this is probably the most difficult thing in life, man. Like we're actually talking about this underlyingly in everything we've spoken about, whether it's like knowing when to be aggressive, knowing when to be more calm, and finding the balance of in between the two, and switching on and switching off, knowing when to train in an aggressive way, knowing when to train in a way based on skill acquisition, knowing when knowing when like your ability to, and I think they actually talk about this stuff a lot to do with like dopamine and all that type of stuff as well, and a lot of like mental kind of stuff. Your ability to switch between mental states heavily dictates success in a lot of scenarios, because one way of existing doesn't have success in this area. Just like in jiu-jitsu, I always talk about this in the classes and stuff, but like everything you do in jiu-jitsu is based on how tight you are to your opponent. There's times where you have to be really tight and powerful and use that connection to throw them around, and there's times where you disconnect from them and loosen up and you need to move to a better position. You need to know when to change between those two states. You need to know when to change between high intensity training and skill acquisition. That's the key to life, man, because it's a tool, and a tool has a purpose and a function. And if you don't use it for its intended purpose or function, you fail. And again, this is hard to learn. It's difficult stuff to like memorize and understand.
Which is exactly the same as like when you try to switch off to sleep, you know what I mean? Like sleep is one of the most important things for us to actually be productive to what we need to do. So that switch, so all these switches are, we need to go really be accountable and try to work on and be experiment. And the right things, like to the day we die, we should be always try to improve ourselves. You know, I think that's the key as well, you know, have that element of accountability with us through life, you know, and be seeing the experiments, trying, you know, experiment here, finding something, okay, that works for me right now in this purpose. And I think that's a very important thing. I think jiu-jitsu gives a lot of accountability, you know what I mean? The more you do jiu-jitsu, if you can take that part of accountability.
Competition even more though.
Competition even more.
Man.
Competition even more. Absolutely. But the accountability aspect that you can take to all realms of life, it's very, very interesting.
The sleeping thing's interesting too, though. Like your ability to switch off, like stress-wise, is what you're talking about. Is a major indicator to whether people change or improve, because sleep is one of the biggest components to like adjusting your like neuro pathways or whatever, or creating new connections. that happens through sleep.
Yeah.
So like if you can't switch off and you don't sleep well, you don't get to those deeper levels of sleep, it makes it more difficult for you to create different connections in your brain. So again, it's like it's psychological, but it's also anatomical, it's physical, it's biological. You actually change your own brain doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's like accepting challenge or being able to switch off from the stress of life and relax and regulate the stress in your life to have a deep enough sleep to change your brain connections to improve your life again. So it's a very interesting stuff that I think people always knew anecdotally. Like if you look at religious books, if you look at just people that have been successful in the world, they're like, oh, do this stuff and it works. But now you can actually prove this stuff through science and data and stuff. And it's very interesting stuff, man. People know what they have to do. It's just whether or not they actually do it, man.
Yeah. And
everybody knows if you want to lose weight, eat less food, do some exercise. Caloric deficit. Simple, but
like you touched on a really good point there, where it's like, you can have all of the best knowledge. It's like knowledge is only power if you use it.
100%.
And it's like I've learned that. Like I went through a phase where I was just, because I think growing up, like during the phase where I was doing jiu-jitsu a lot, so I used to play like competitive like gaming.
Yeah.
And playing that, like I would be up till 4, sometimes 3, 4 in the morning, and then go to school like at 8 o'clock.
Shit.
So that was like pretty much my life for like a long time, and that definitely stunted my growth.
Yeah.
So I pretty much didn't sleep for, it was quite a few years. I think it was like nearly 4-6 years.
Yeah.
Where I only slept about like 4 to 6 hours. Max.
A night. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's like in a key time of life where you should be developing
absolutely.
your brain.
And I definitely think that stunted my growth like mentally.
Yeah.
Because like obviously everyone's like, oh, but you're tall. It's like, but man, like mentally, I always felt like things took so much longer to learn.
Yeah.
Like obviously, like having this sort of, although like initially I thought it was like, oh, because I'm South African, it's like second language, but that's actually supposed to improve your ability to learn.
Okay. Yeah.
Like which
being
that's
bilingual.
yeah. So and I always thought that I was like, oh, but it's because I'm like sort of South African. Excuses, right? But it was actually not sleeping enough. Then when I started sleeping more, it's like I was like, man, and then I started reading books and things like that, and I felt like my mind was finally starting to switch on, because I feel like all the things I did in jiu-jitsu and the reasons I got good at them was because I just did them over and over again. It's like you were saying. It's like I'd done a lot of those techniques, like armbar, triangle, and Kimura. Like those things I have done just like probably like thousands and thousands of times. Just those simple movements. But then everything outside of that, obviously, I was like quite like useless at. But then going to getting sleep, then I was like, wow, like 8 hours sleep is amazing. It's like not only the like ability to like sort of like be, it's like when you get a good night's sleep, like that like nice switched on feeling you have. It's like somebody says something, you just reply straight away, and not like, oh, what'd you say again? What was the
like
thing?
that cloudy fogginess.
Yeah, you're like super sharp.
Mental sharpness.
So then like reading lots and like sort of getting a lot more, I feel like in some ways I started getting a lot more like mental like attention to my jiu-jitsu and like in life, versus like when I was younger I was a lot more just like working labor, like things like that. It's like you just have to do things. So I felt like I had some like ability to sort of do things like where you can sort of make calculations in your mind where it's like physical stuff, like moving a chair or like picking something else. Like you could see things that other people probably can't see so much because you just do it all the time. It's like you are it's like what you do is who you are. And so then going into like sort of reading more and things like that, and like learning more jiu-jitsu skills, because I was always the person who was like, no, I just do the same techniques over and over and over again. I would never go on YouTube or anything like that to like learn new techniques. And then I felt like I started getting a lot more like that mental. I was like, wow, like I can see like the different things connecting. And then I sort of dropped the whole physical thing. I was like, oh, I don't need to train as much or like things like that. And then I feel like now I'm finally at a point where I can see the benefit of both, where it's like you can have all of the knowledge, like you can know every single technique in jiu-jitsu or whatever, and it's like, but if you can't do it, like if you cannot physically get that position or this position
or
or
get
that
the timing
position. It's
to do
like
it, whatever. Yeah.
It's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
So it really is that balance of everything.
Yeah,
So,
100%, and oscillating between the two.
Yeah.
you need to be tactical in times, and you need to be like just aggressive and explosive in times. Like whether it's competition or in anything, your ability to change between states and ways of acting and behaving it dictates how much success you have. You can't just be one thing forever.
Yeah.
But like, I think we kind of get taught, and I think it's incorrect in like Western countries, that like you should always focus on comfort and joy and happiness. And that attitude is so ingrained in like the society and people's psychology that everybody's always looking for this one thing that fixes everything. I hear this question.
Silver bullet, yeah.
I hear this question every class. What is the best way to do this? And I have to say every time, dude, it depends what you want. What car is the best? And they're like, what type of food is the best? What shoes are the best?
That's such a
What
good
clothes
point.
are the best? What's the best? What does that even mean? You don't even think about this stuff. You just want me to give you an answer that solves all your problems so you feel comfortable and you never have to think about anything yourself.
Yeah.
That is not how life works, dude.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. There's things that are good for that, and there's things that are good for that. It changes, man. The situation it's subjective. You just have to understand the underlying rules of what you're looking for. For example, I want to lose weight. Caloric deficit, that's the only rule.
Yeah.
Eat less in calories than you use up in the day. All right?
Otherwise, you wouldn't be fit on the Porsche.
Yeah, you wouldn't fit on the Porsche, exactly. But the thing is like, that's the only rule. The way you do that doesn't matter. If you want to be vegan, if you want to be carnivore, if you want to be blah, 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 it doesn't matter. It still falls under one rule.
Yeah.
Less calories than you use up in a day.
But people
you
are
lose
very
weight.
Mr. Theory right now, you know, like I was doing a diet and then people, but what diet? Eduardo's diet.
But dude,
you know what I
but
mean?
dude,
Like, my
this is-
diet.
but
The
this
diet
is
that
the-
I know will lose weight.
Dude,
Man. Don't
dude,
talk that, you know.
This is the problem that I'm talking about. People want to talk more about the nuance of the shit than actually achieving the purpose
name,
of it.
yeah.
What are you trying to do? You're trying to sweep the guy, yeah? So hold him in some way so that he can't post on that and push him in that direction. That's the basis of the thing. You're focusing on, but should I hold the grip like this? And should I do it with my butt facing the sky and holding his collar and my toe in my own mouth? Dude,
Yeah, I
grab
know.
the guy and kick him there. That's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you do that.
I
Pick
know.
1,000 ways to do it. Just do this. Oh, but I don't know what there is no best way. God damn it. I'm telling you. It doesn't exist. Pick something and do it.
There was one class you taught like ages ago, and I remember like going to it, and you spoke about that like spectrum of where it's like connection and disconnection.
Yeah.
And I remember like just sitting there and I was listening, and it was so clear, like you pointing it out in that way where it's just like you have all these techniques and ways to achieve the same thing.
100%.
But then, and I think I was always that person trying to find that perfect thing. You know,
we
it's
all
like,
are. This
yeah,
is what I'm
of
saying.
course.
Societally, in the Western culture,
Yeah.
this is what you're taught to look for.
Yeah.
Happiness, comfort, joy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The one.
Yeah.
The one thing, the one job, the one partner, the thing that's going to make me
And I think
fulfilled.
struggle helps with the opposite. Struggle, man. Doesn't matter how, man. Just make that shit happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, yeah.
But that's because we're coddled in Western countries. That's
Yeah,
why.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
the whole purpose. It's like because life's so good here
Yeah.
that you never experience any discomfort. So you're just chasing some amazing fantasy of a perfect life that doesn't exist.
Just like the video game.
Correct. But people that live in other countries, life is fucking hard. So they're
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
in tune with reality because life's difficult every day.
Yeah.
And you don't have the ability to kind of get caught up in that fantasy.
Yeah,
because
you don't have the option.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
You don't have the
yeah.
option. No,
Yeah, man,
I definitely agree with you on that.
But continue about the thing you were saying about like the clearness of the spectrum or whatever.
Yeah, like it really is like when you put it like that, it really just simplifies. And I think that's one of the things I've really picked up with your teaching is you take really complex things
Yeah.
and just turn them into very simple
Binary
ways.
things.
Yeah,
It's
a
either this or
binary-
it's
yeah.
either that. Yeah.
And but then also having that where it's the way that you're doing it is it's not a closed. So there's like a principle in like computer science, which I'm gonna butcher this, but essentially it's where you're able to add things to a system without changing the system. And it's like that. I feel like you've done that in many ways with your jiu-jitsu, and that's why you're able to just like take really like whether it's this technique, that technique, and that, it's just like that spectrum of where you can just draw a line, and it's like, okay, here's 100%, here's 0%. Where are you on that line? It's like, are you super connected to the guy? It's like, is he trying to crush your head? He's holding you that tight. It's like, okay, you're on that spectrum. You need to go further in that direction. Because trying to disconnect from that, like you just, it's like you're trying to break through the wall when it's concrete. It's like, okay, use your head, sure. You can go at it all day, you're not going to get through it. So it's, that really like changed my perspective.
That's actually, really cool. That's the goal, you know what I mean? I try and make it as clear and concise as possible. Of course, there's exceptions to rules, you know what I mean? There's exceptions to all laws. Nothing is 100% absolute. That's also another paradox in the world, but we're talking about probability. I want you to have the most success possible, and that comes down to what's the most common thing that's going to occur. And in this situation, it's this, and this situation is that. And like we talked about, caloric deficit, that's the rule for diet. You are going to lose weight. Is there some exception to that? Potentially, maybe. Cut off your leg, there you go, there's an exception. Don't have to go on any diet, you lose, a third of your body weight. But funny, but see, there's always an exception to the rule. People focus less on what they're actually trying to achieve and all the little intricacies and bullshit that comes to like the way of doing it. The way of doing it is irrelevant. What is your goal, man?
I think I mean, the way I see it, like Anton does really well, is like he gets a complicated like a thing that haven't been put together. He creates a very simple concept, and once you have that concept, he opens you for the window gets bigger, you know what I mean? So suddenly you have more understanding of the options and the timing to do the options. And jiu-jitsu is really related to timing as well, So that's that's very nice. I mean, I think it's that's similar to what you just said, but that's how I feel as well. It gives people, but you have to really try. People have a problem because they want the answers, they want the best. They have a problem to try to digest a very simple concept sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, but that concept, it can be better than 10 techniques, because they're gonna use forever and they're gonna make 100 techniques,
Well, like Maartin was saying before, is like you can know all the techniques, but if you don't know when to do them and you don't know when to change between the states of when to do certain types of techniques, tight techniques, loose techniques, whatever like groupings you want to put them in, you still don't have any success, dude. You can't have success because you don't know when to do things. You don't know when to not be. For example, if you were about to go to bed, and
it's called timing in English.
Yeah, correct. It's called timing. If you were about to go to bed and you were drinking coffee and you were watching a movie and you start doing this and you start doing push-ups, probably not a good time for you to have high arousal. You're trying to sleep, correct? It's the same shit here. It's just when you use extreme analogies of how we do it, people go, oh, that's so stupid. Yeah, but that's how stupid everyone is with so many other things in life. You know that there's no point of you training 100% all year round. You're fucking injured every 3 months, but you still do it. Why? You know that going out and drinking 12 beers a night or 12 beers a night over the weekend is not good for your waistline, but you do it anyway. What is the purpose of what you're trying to do? But all the bullshit, ill-discipline crap. No, what are you trying to do? You know what to do already. People don't want to do it, man. That's the only fucking thing.
Like that. That's definitely where I got with. Like once I felt I started acquiring more knowledge, I was like, it's almost like in some ways, like you get a little high from it. Like you're like, oh wow, it's like it's like a new technique or something like that. And then you're like, oh, well, I'll just look up a new technique. And it's like rather than you pick a new, because there definitely comes a time where. And I'm sure you'll probably like realize this, especially like with your training. It's like we were talking like with the concepts. Like you can have like millions of different techniques, but if you're never able to use them, so it's like. But then once you get really good at, like I got really good at like a set of techniques.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but then I did sort of close myself off quite a lot from like other things.
That's because that stuff works and it's comfortable.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
That's the whole attitude I'm talking about. Yeah.
And then once it was comfortable, then I was like, okay, now I need to improve. So then I started improving, but then I took improving as being lazy to like acquiring knowledge of, you know, oh, I'll just learn this technique, learn this one and this one.
But do you know when
never actually embedded them in me, like you said with the tool. It's like you
physical,
can, if we're in a moment like where it's a match or something, and somebody like grabs the neck, it's like if you've drilled 1,000 times, okay, grab it, go boom, boom, boom. It's like it just happens. It's like, whereas when you're like, oh, I remember this one technique and it said to grab here, and you're like, I can't break the grip. But if you've broken that grip a million times, because you know the feeling, it's like there is an element, I think, especially like I think for newer people like starting jiu-jitsu, like it takes quite a long time, but it's like I feel that connection you have to a technique is not just doing the technique, because I think often we look for this perfect, it's like you said, like the perfect grab it like this and perfectly break it off like this, but it's not always, there's so many variables, right? Like somebody can grab your collar, but it's like, where are they grabbing? Here. So it's that being able to feel and know, and that only comes from training. It's like knowing exactly where to grab and how, and if they're resisting, then to change. And it's like, because if you don't, then it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. I just want to mention like one last thing, which I think is kind of important to note. But like, I've said this a bunch of times. Like, it all comes down to personal responsibility in the end of all of it. Like, it doesn't matter what social issue, it doesn't matter what's happening in people's lives. It's always personal responsibility. Nothing supersedes that in life. The excuses, the bullshit, but my weight. No, all right. People only change when they're forced to change. That's it. People do not change on their own. Animals don't do it. Nobody does. People. Okay, not true. There's exception to that. 1 in a million person, 1 in 100,000, whatever, will consciously go, oh, this is not working for me, I'll do something else. Most human beings are their human nature. They do stuff based on survival. That's what human nature is. Everything you do is a survival mechanism. Why do you find comfort in those techniques that we talked about before? Because they work for you. And if you venture outside of them, you might lose. And if you venture outside of that, you might get tapped. And if you venture outside of that, it's scary because it's unknown.
It's like a scramble.
Correct.
It's like
I might lose. I might have bad outcomes. I might have fear. Comfort is good. Stay safe. Stay survival. People only change. When did you feel like changing the techniques? When someone got you within submission, when they stopped working, when you went and did a competition and I didn't get the result I want. That's when people change. But you got to be a little bit frightened and scared initially, because even to get to that point, you got to be confident enough or accepting of challenge enough to put yourself in a position to train with somebody that can actually beat you. And some people don't do that point, and that's why I value people's effort to improve. I don't care that you lost. Congratulations for going there and actually challenging yourself and putting yourself in a situation to open the world of possibilities of improving your life, instead of hiding and never doing a competition and never training with that guy that's hard to train with. Man, everybody has that experience. You talked about waking up in the morning before the comp. Man, there's times here where I'm like, fuck, I don't want to train with that guy, man. It's going to be this aggressive training that's hard. It's going to be close training. I don't know. And then you're like, nah, fuck it, let's go. And you do it anyway, and then you feel great about it and all the stuff we've already talked about. But to do better in life, to do things, you need to put yourself in the worst case scenario ever. People change when they have to, not when they want to. That's the world, man. People create businesses and earn this money and do all this stuff when they got no other options and they got no opportunity. People do shit based off of survival. That's human nature. You will figure it out. Drop yourself in the deep end. You either die or you figure it out. That's the nature of humans, and it's always been their nature.
Maartin, you start teaching as well, and you've been teaching for quite a while now, and what are the how much you think that helped with your jiu-jitsu having to teach, and what would be your advice following up on the question with someone that just starting jiu-jitsu, like what you could tell with your experience now teaching for them to focus on or not to do in order for them to improve faster?
Yeah, well, definitely, like, the biggest thing I learned from because when I first started jiu-jitsu, it was pretty much just Phil teaching at the Springfield, and like initially I just started helping with the kids classes, and initially I was just the dummy, for Phil to sort of like demonstrate the techniques and things like that. And like definitely the biggest thing that teaching helped me, like, sort of over the time that I was training, because one of the biggest things is when you don't have good training partners, and when I say good training partners, I just mean like, like high level sort of like technical. It's like if somebody comes off the street and they've never done jiu-jitsu, it's like, don't expect them to know everything. And I think that is something that I've picked up over this time, where initially I was quite good at that because I had to, in order for me to get better, I always had to help my training partners. It's like, and the same way, like, they do something and I'm like, what did you do? And that's how you really improve. But then coming from a teaching perspective, like where you're actually teaching a class, like I would say, like, I was probably not the best coach for like quite a long time, just because I sort of started, because once you learn these concepts, these principles, these things,
you expect other people to have something.
Like, it's obvious.
Yeah, you think it's like, can't you just see it? Like, can't you just do this thing? And I think
I have this chat all the time with Phantom, man, because, and I love to put myself to, that's why I like to go and learn new things, because I can just see how hard it is just to get one word. Like I started doing Pilates, I started doing yoga, just to understand one movement, one word, or they saying, it's already, okay, I know that one, today, and I can see how hard it is for us. This is obvious, but a lot of people that are very experienced in a field struggle to give information, and that's why it's good to be a beginner at something, do start something, feel how hard it is, so you can
to understand
expectations, your expectations can be equalized towards it.
Yeah, I felt that with
that's interesting,
with coding and computers. It's like, never growing, like I always grew up playing like video games and stuff like that, but actually learning how the internals work, that just opened my eyes. I was like, okay, wow, it's like, and even just not training consistently for myself, like for a long time, like, because when I was teaching, I really just focused on like a lot of my students, where I just felt myself kind of trying to sort of get them to the point where they sort of improve. So helping them learn in the way they learn, versus like sort of just throwing out a bunch of techniques. And then, like,
everyone's different. It's hard to hit like every different facet of how people learn, whether some people need to hear it a certain way, some people need to see it a certain way, some people need to go and physically do it a bunch of times. Everyone learns in different manners and stuff, and it's difficult. And some people are very timid, some people are more overt. Like you talked about this, about a particular UFC coach and stuff like that got in trouble online because of what he was saying to somebody during a fight and stuff. But they know how to deal with their athlete. They are very intimate with them. They understand the nuances of their psychology and stuff. They know how to deal with them. And that's a really hard thing as a coach. Like, you're dealing with different personalities, different psychologies, different all these things. Some things you can do with some people that you can't do with others. That's hard, man.
Yes.
Because you're trying to figure out all the little nuances of how to deal with everybody. Like in group classes, it's pretty difficult, you know what I mean? Like, you just try to hit as many different ways of teaching as possible. You sound and you click and show your hand and stuff, or you step it and go 1, 2, 3. You explain the technique, you show it a bunch of times. So you're trying all of that stuff, then you'll walk around and show people individually. You might do it on them, or you might get them to do the movement they're doing on you and tell them how to move their body and stuff. It's really difficult to hit all those different, like, aspects of how people take information in. Like you're saying, everyone's different. Man, I always struggle with that. Always. I always will too. You always expect people like, man, come on, you can't get it, come on. But no, it's hard.
And even there's another, a coach, just like in soccer, for example, they'll have like a player and they'll say, man, maybe you can play at this position here rather than position, and then suddenly the guy becomes amazing, you know, like so I think jiu-jitsu, you can also come to a person that used to happen a lot back on the day, like you can come to a person that you can clearly see that, man, this guy has a really good quality here,
aptitude for these
techniques, moves, you know,
yeah.
these techniques would work well because of his body or because he's flat, whatever, and you just give them that 2-3 techniques, and man, with that the guy flourishes, you know. So which is another thing as well for the coach to try to develop. There's so many things that the coach has to develop, you know, like understanding people's psychology, understanding how to push each individual, which is different, understanding what you can actually give to that person, the package that can get to the next level. Yeah, and I think it's a big challenge. It's always improving. Like, it's amazing how we're always improving. That I think that's the biggest key in anything we do in life, man. Is to always try to improve. Be open to accept, like, there is innovations in the world. There's like people that are like, for example, when I went to Dara, everywhere I go, I try to learn something. Everywhere I go, there are things that I learned from Pilates that I use here. Like, you know, just the way they run the business. Like, when I went from Dara, you don't know that, but I spoke with Phantom. For example, you guys do a lot of training through the line, like, you know, like, which probably we've done here before many times, but we stopped doing a little bit, and that thing is really good, you know. Like, some classes do, man, train to the line to submission happens, so there's no much, you know, time out, you know what I mean. You'll have to change partners. Everyone trains with everyone have a time to think about the technique, so it's a very good training as well, you know what I mean.
That's easy, but like, everything has like a reason. A lot of the time that's because of the space. You need more space, so you do it that way. And yeah, like, it's just funny how things formulate in that type of thing. But in saying what you were just saying there, like, it being like super balanced as a coach, and then even the types of trainings you do to make sure people train in a way that they're going to improve. A lot of the time, positional sparring is better than them doing normal training, so they work on specific skills. It's such a multifaceted thing for coaching, but I still believe, aside from all of that stuff, the thing that's most important is people understand the underlying foundational rules for how things work. Because all the technique, all the training, all the other stuff, if you don't understand what you're actually attempting to achieve, you're wasting your time.
Sure.
Like, I think one of the, like, when I first started jiu-jitsu, my primary focus was always to get submission. That was it. Like, that was good. Always awesome. That was always like the main thing. So, like, going out on the weekend, I really felt like, and having that sort of bit more of a calm, I did feel an essence of where I was actually able to recognize that there are points. Yeah. You know, like, because obviously I know the point system, I know how to do them, I know it, like, passing,
how to score, and everything.
Yeah, but being able to, under pressure, like, recognize, okay, if I pass, I get the 2 points, and if I hold that, like, I'll get the points for that. And it's like, that really, like, you know, I'm still a massive advocate for, like, submission. I love submission. You know, it's like getting to the back, but I think getting to the back, getting to the mount, it's like, regardless, and obviously it's like you said, it's like, that's why you get the 4 points for it, for both of those positions, is because they are just the most dominant positions. And that's it. Like, I think often there's so much to learn, and that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned so far, is there is so much to learn that if you're trying to learn every single technique, like, you have to, like, unless you want to spend every single day of your life, and even if you do, you would never, like, every hour of your day, you're still never going to learn all of them. So it's like,
it's not possible.
Do the 80-20, where it's like, pick the best, you know, the best techniques, or learn the principles behind them. Always try to improve on them, but ultimately it's like, you're only going to learn so much over your lifetime. So it's like, be smart with your time.
100%.
And don't just, you know, go on YouTube, watch 20 different techniques in one night, and then go to training.
Pick 2 of them, like, and then go and do it for 6 months. Yeah,
that's it. And that's really how you get better.
It's proof that jack of all trades doesn't work right as well, you know? Like, get good at, man, get good. Focus on 1, 2, man, lapidate it, you know, understand the timing. Yeah, I agree.
It's just so much. Yeah. So much to learn.
Yeah, man, never stops. All right, Maartin, well, we're going to call it a little bit there, but Man, I actually think like you have a very mature kind of outlook on all this stuff, and I think this is a proponent of jiu-jitsu as well. It's like you just learn so much more about life and the balance of the world and stuff like that, and it's very philosophical and spiritual in many ways. For like, you know, you're a young guy. I think I had a very similar kind of outlook as well, and just like talking to you now in a more kind of deep way, like you can really see the depth and new, like maturity that people have that do jiu-jitsu. We did an interview with some of the young boys from the kids class as well, and like you just see how man, I don't even know the word. It's the maturity, it's all that, but just like they just have such a balanced perspective about certain things, and they're not too like impulsive, but they're not boring, but you just find like a really interesting perspective of life, because you take in so much information about yourself and learn about emotions and being human and
balanced,
stuff. So balanced
as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
yeah,
I would definitely like on the last note, I would say that decision I made when I had that $600 in my hand, best decision of your life. Get the money from mum and dad and go and sign up to jiu-jitsu now. Thanks, Mum.
I'll do it now.
You know, for me, like, because I saw you really young, Matt, and you know, and it happened to all of you guys, you know, happened to Anton, happened to Matthew Ba, you know, and so many others, like, and every time you have this opportunity to have this chat here, and I can see, you know, the way you guys are expressing yourself and the things you guys believe in, and a lot of myself, I just nod my head going, man, I think exactly the same way. And for me, it's awesome to see, you know what I mean? Like, it's just that jiu-jitsu did its job, you know what I mean? And I'm glad you actually put in the effort, and, you know, like you can see all the benefits, you had the benefits happening in your life, and you advocate them for other people, you know, and for me, this is what's the most important thing about this, and the friendships that come along with it, you know. So, man, I can always say thanks for, you know, like being training partner nowadays, you know what I mean? Like, and share the mat with you, and it's awesome, brother. I'm really happy.
It's a friendship that, you know, that never dies off.
Yeah, man, that's right.
It's something
keep
that
training.
you live with for the rest of your life.
100%, man.
Yeah.
And let's keep training to like we are 85, come here, you know what I mean? Like, we're like, oh, don't do the submission, just go there. Oh, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll be watching at that point, man. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we can keep going. If you keep doing the yoga, I keep doing the yoga. I got to start again. Start back to the yoga, maybe. Well, Maartin, man, thanks so much for coming in. It was very interesting hearing your perspective, and yeah, thanks so much for sharing, man.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks. Appreciate it.
No worries, man. Thank you.